Thank you for watching. The City Council, or a majority of them, as well as the Mayor, asked me to give a public discussion on the infrastructure issues facing the City of Fort Stockton, and so that's why we're here today. So the topics we're going to cover today include: one, what is the mission statement of the City of Fort Stockton's water utility? We're also going to give some broad discussion about the total infrastructure repairs that are needed across the City of Fort Stockton. We're also going to go back, 85 years to the City of Fort Stockton's water rights, how they were established, is the usage, and those type of information. And then we're going to cover the City of Fort Stockton's production permit request that was submitted last month for 30 acre-feet for industrial use, 968 of public use to support this community. And then we're really going to dive into the justification for the 968 acre-feet production permit request and why it's so critical for this community's future. And we're then going to go through the growth projections of the City of Fort Stockton. We're very fortunate because the City of Fort Stockton is growing, and we're trying as the water municipality to meet the future growth demands of our citizens and this community. So the mission statement. So the City of Fort Stockton, its mission statement is very simple: to build and maintain a resilient infrastructure and legal rights to provide the lowest cost and highest quality water possible for our community. Now, unfortunately, we do have major infrastructure repairs that are going to need to be made. The total amount of that is approximately $45 million over the next 5 to 10 years, depending on which infrastructure we're talking about. The City Council and the Mayor are very focused on the most immediate issue, which is the 9-mile pipeline between here and Belding, which is 56 years old and is also 20 years past its useful life and is in desperate need of being repaired. And we're going to go into that in a lot of detail. The other major upgrades include a $15 million upgrade to our sewer systems, not just the sewer collection system, but also the sewer plant itself. And then there's an additional $15 million worth of infrastructure repairs to the police station, as well as to the landfill itself. Now, this presentation we're covering today only covers the pipeline and the water usage of the City of Fort Stockton and the production permit that the city municipality is asking for in order to serve this community. So the history of the city's water use. In the permit application we submitted to the Middle Pecos Groundwater Conservation District included 2 wells and an RO plant that we have. The 2 wells, a part of this production permit, were actually utilized by the City of Fort Stockton dating back to the 1930s. The city has used these wells for a very extended period of time, one as the main water source for the city, and the second one is once we moved our water production mainly to Belding, these wells served as the alternative water source for this community, and they always have. And what we ended up doing is that in the 1960s a new pipeline was built, Pecos County paid for it, and then the pipeline itself was given to the City of Fort Stockton. That was in the 1960s, as well as a water station being installed at that point in time, and the city being able to generate revenue to offset expenses that our citizens would otherwise have to pay for. So this is really where the city's water use is. Now the city's water rights, which is really more of an interesting endeavor. The city owns, not only Belding but also 2 other farms, and of that we have about 36 registered water wells across Pecos County. Of those 36 water wells, only 4 of them have production permits, and these production permits are historic and existing use permits. Each one of those H&E permits, shortened, is a separate permit that the city achieved back in 2005. Interesting enough though, even though we have 36 wells, we only have 4 H&E permits in order to support this community. What ended up happening in 2005 is that the city did not submit a H&E permit for these 2 wells that we're now requesting production permits for from the Middle Pecos Groundwater District. This was a clerical error. Both myself as well as the city manager were on a phone call with the Middle Pecos management team, and we figured out that these wells, which we've been using since 2012 and even going back to 1930, they didn't have production permits, but yet the city was still using them. Within 24 hours, we submitted new production permit requests in order to make sure that we were not doing illegal groundwater pumping. And so that's the entire reason that we are now submitting this 960 acre-feet production permit for public use in order to only support this community. The other thing, we're going to keep on talking about this. These two wells in the RO plant were specifically redeveloped in 2009 and 2010 in order to serve as an emergency water source, an alternative water source for this community. This production permit has nothing to do with selling or marketing water outside of the Middle Pecos Groundwater District. Its sole use is to be used to provide water to our current and future growth of this community, and that's all there is to it. Now, a lot of people have been asking, well, what is the true value of these two wells, the RO plant, as well as the city's water rights underneath this acre of land that the city owns? It's about $4.5 million all in total. The water rights are probably valued around $1.1 million, and then the city, with taxpayer money, with the Pecos County, ended up investing $3.5 million between 2009 and 2012 to make this water source a reliable thing for the city to rely upon when either the pipeline fails between here and Belding, the RO plant, the main RO plant, fails, or also the well field fails for whatever reason. Some people have asked, well, what could possibly cause you to lose one of these large assets? And it could either be a man-made or a natural disaster. A tornado could very simply take out the well field or the storage facilities and the RO plant that we have associated to this. This is the entire reason the city of Fort Stockton and its taxpayers invested this amount of money in order to prepare for an alternative water source to serve this community. If you were to look at, it's $4.5 million, but what does this mean on a household or a business basis? What's the value to the community members themselves? It's approximately $1,200 per meter that is installed across our territory for the water municipality. So if you have a meter, this facility is worth $1,200 to you, and that's why the city of Fort Stockton is fighting for your water rights to get these two production permits in order to serve you and this community. The permit application, I'm going to get a little bit more detailed here, included 30 acre-feet for industrial use. This is solely to serve the water station that's been installed since the 1960s. We didn't apply for an H&E permit back in 2005. That's the city's mistake. We're trying to clarify or try to resolve that. And any money that's made off of this water station will reduce the expense of our citizens on their water bills. The other thing is that the 960 acre-feet, that is only going to be used to serve citizens within this groundwater district, within this county itself. It's only for existing water users. Now, we have included, and this PowerPoint will be posted on the website also, pictures of the two wells that are inside of the city limits that this city relies upon only for emergency purposes. We actually received a state grant to update one of the wells, which is the one on the left, and the one on the right is right there. We have an RO plant right next to these in order to process this water to make it usable and also to meet TCEQ regulations, which is the Texas Commission on Environmental Quality. Now, the justification for the 960 acre-feet, because you'll hear a lot of people saying, well, the city has H&E permits for 8,081 acre-feet. That's correct, but that's out at Belding. Belding's well field is not the well field that we're talking about here as an alternative water source and was permitted already under TCEQ regulations. The only reason we do not have H&E permits on these two wells currently is because the city had a clerical mistake back in 2005, and that is why we are now asking for production permits in order to serve this community. The city and this community have consistently relied upon these wells since the 1930s. And so this isn't like we're asking to drill two new wells, which we're going to be just relying upon. I mean, these wells have always been used by this community. The big issue that we're going to run into and why we need this production permit is the pipeline is failing. It's only a matter of time before it fails again, and when it does, we only have about 1 day's worth of water storage to serve this community. Without these two wells and the RO plant operating, we are really in trouble, and there's no easy way to say that. The other question we're going to keep on discussing is that the 8,081 acre-feet historic use permits that the city has are needed by this community for the short-term and long-term growth of our community. We're actually going to have documentation to back us up based on actual data that we gather. Some people ask, well, how often do you actually use these wells? Every week that we're using these wells in the RO plant, we store about 150,000 gallons of water in order to basically put into a storage tank. So when the emergency actually occurs, we have a storage tank that's ready to go with water already in it. When an emergency does exist, each one of these wells is capable of producing 500,000 gallons each, which is about $1 million a day for this community. So we have these for an emergency. These water wells supply water for emergency purposes only for 16 sections of land. That's 10,240 acres, and that's the distribution territory of the city's water municipality. Every school, every governmental building, Pecos County buildings, and also over 3,600 meters receive their emergency water supply from these two wells in the RO plant. So over 8,000 citizens. So how to come up with 960 acre feet? The reason we came up with that number is that covers the 3-month window that we need to resolve the worst case scenario. So figure a tornado destroying one of our key assets. We've got to be able to have 3 months to make major repairs for that. And the city manager is going to take some time in a few minutes to describe what does the pipeline actually look like and why do we need 3 months worth of water use from these two wells and why we're asking for that production permit. So what we've done, we've taken the last 7 years worth of water usage of the city of Fort Stockton, we've divided that in quarters. And so if it's a 3-month window, we need at least 960 acre feet to resolve most of the issues that we're ever going to run into. And once again, it's only for emergency water use. Now, an interesting thing, if we have another year like 2011 and we have a worst case scenario, these wells are not going to provide all the water we need for emergency water use. And so we just need to hope that the worst case scenario doesn't happen in an extreme drought condition, because even this we're going to be really stretched from an infrastructure perspective. And now, one of the things we like to show pictures, the city manager is going to describe the pipeline that we're going to, what's there, and these are pictures of where we've had blowouts, and then we've basically had to repair them. And this is an all hands on deck scenario. Everyone working at the city water utility is basically available. We're fixing the problem as quickly as we possibly can because we need that water for our community. Now, the growth rate